I'm starting Torchlight Infinite's 9th season by playing the new hero trait Iris Vigilant Breeze, who allows you to play as one of your spirit magi and use their abilities directly, which is really cool, especially because you can use their ultimate ability with no cooldown. But before I get into things, I need to take a minute to thank this video's sponsor, XD. If this build looks interesting to you, as a note, you will need the Season Pass to be able to play Iris Vigilant Breeze. But for now, let's get into things. Now, for the early leveling process, I decided to play Flame Spirits, because they have this big fire aura. It's kind of like Righteous Fire if you've played Path of Exile, and it makes clearing things really easy. I did stick with it longer than I would actually advise. I think once you get to like the middle of the early Nether Realm, Timemark 4 or 5, you should switch off to either Erosion or Stone Spirits, maybe Lightning if you're feeling spicy. I did it all the way up to Timemark 7, at which point my single target damage was definitely feeling a bit lacking, but having the AoE so I could just walk around and enemies would passively die was really nice. Also, spamming the ultimate ability, I did have enough burst damage that it was kind of okay. Now, I'm not going to make a full guide on Flame Spirits because I swapped off of it. I didn't really investigate too much on how to min-max a character, but I did want to add one other note, which is, when clearing Control Spell is the best because it increases the damage from the AoE dot aura. But if you're spamming the ultimate ability, you really want Quick Decision, because the extra cast time makes it feel much better. So, after getting to Timemark 7, I swapped into Rock Spirits. These are new, they are shiny, and their ultimate ability is a leap attack. So if I can't passively kill all of my enemies by walking by an existing, I'm going to jump on them and kill them that way, which is surprisingly effective. Not only did I go through Timemark 7 pretty quickly with relatively few deaths, thanks in part to the fact that a Rock Magus provides a good bit of defense, but I killed Timemark 7 Traveler in one try without any deaths, which I'm pretty happy about. From here, I'm not sure where I'm going to take the build. I'm either going to continue to scale Rock Magus, or I'm going to go Erosion Magus. Both look really strong, and I might also experiment with Lightning Magus. I just haven't decided yet. So, if any of that sounds interesting, or you want to know where the character goes in the future, do be sure to get subscribed, and hey, maybe you leave a like while you're down there. But for now, let's get into what I've done on my Rock Magus setup, including skills, passives, gear. So let's get into things, starting with skills. First up, my defensive setup, Delayed Pain with Preparation. The idea here is to have injury buffer to prevent one-shots, since I get quite a bit of recovery from rejuvenation. 115 life regeneration per second, about 3.5k life, so that's going to make a meaningful difference, and it could be scaled a little bit with some life regen on gear. Realistically, I don't think you absolutely need anything defensive. The build has felt quite tanky because the Rock Magus itself gives you about a 10% hit damage reduction. But I also haven't felt like damage has been an issue, so might as well invest into defenses and make the playstyle more comfy. Then there's Blink, which is another optional quality of life thing. Realistically, you could very well use something like Prayer to increase the defenses of your Magi. They have not been dying for me though, so that didn't seem like an issue. You could add something like Summon Grim Phantom for a little bit of extra damage, though you might want to swap your stuff over to Elemental then, because it's going to be doing elemental damage. Or you can just go with a regular old damage and power skill, like Machine Army. Again, I didn't really feel like any of those were super necessary, so I went with utility for Blink. I suspect, as I push into 7.1, 7.2, or Timemark 8, I'm probably going to swap off of some of these quality of life things until I get better gear. Then, Nourishment of Life. This gives a whole bunch of growth to your Spirit Magi. With Preparation, it's basically up 100% of the time. And the idea of the supports is to increase the effect and extend the duration, because the cooldown is a base of 10 seconds and Preparation prepares it once every 8. Cooldown reduction should line things up pretty nicely. Dazzling Bloom. Oh, Dazzling Bloom, the skill that I kind of like, but also kind of hate. It gives a really big bonus to your Spirit Magi, based on the enemy's rarity. Here's the problem. Casting it teleports all Spirit Magi to the designated location. If you are the Spirit Magi, casting it teleports you, which can be really cool, and you kind of blink through the map, or really awful. So I don't know if this is going to stay in the build. It's a lot of damage, but also I kind of hate the teleporting. Last up, vulnerability. Cursed enemies receive 40% additional physical damage. That's just a lot of damage, and I'm getting Dark Gate from my boots. Long term, it's possible that I change things for Dark Gate. Then again, maybe that's another unreliable random teleport, so maybe I don't do that. Then, the usual Train of Malice, make it into a big old AoE, extend duration, preparation, all that fun stuff. For auras, weapon amplification. You and your allies gain 35% additional fizz damage. Rock Magus, big old Rocky boy, fizz. So, yeah, weapon amp. Then you've got Fearless, which gives crit strike rating and additional damage. Rock Magus uses melee skills, so this all applies. Next up, Rejuvenation. This is a good way to stay alive with a little bit of extra recovery. As a note, if you are struggling to cap your resistances, drop Weapon Amplification for the Elemental Resistance aura. Not only will this give you about 10% res, which makes it much easier to cap, but you take minus 12% additional elemental damage, which is a good bit of a defensive buffer. And last, but certainly not least, Rock Magus, the core of the build. This is your main skill and what allows you to play as a big rock guy. Elemental Duo means you get to play as 2 big rock guys. Then, Harvest Time automatically uses the enhanced skill. I'm not 100% sure if this is actually worth it, but so far it's been pretty good, so I'm keeping it until it starts feeling bad. Precision Strike reduces the AoE but gives you attack speed. Attack speed feels really, really, really good. I strongly recommend it if you're playing a Rock Magus build. Quick Decision, same thing. You want attack speed, so this feels really good. Tendon Slicer I've been experimenting with because it's additional damage and debuffs enemies, so 2 separate multipliers. Honestly, I'm not 100% sure. Both of these could be swapped out for other things, depending on your gear level. For example, instead of Tendon Slicer, I was actually using added physical damage for a bit when I didn't have any added physical damage on my weapons, and it was really good. The tooltip says it's better now. I'm not 100% sure if that's true because when I tested it on the dummy, it was worse. But again, maybe the dummy's lying to me. I don't know. As for soul candles, I don't have any at the moment. But spell, physical, summon, spirit magus, so, get something like physical skill level, maybe get something that debuffs enemies. Sadly, the main skill is supported by would be a little bit awkward because the main skill isn't the magus. You could probably find a way to make it work. Swap things around, drop one of the skills here. Now when it comes to talents, first up, orders, additional minion damage, and additional summon skill cast speed, which I don't know if that actually applies to the skills used by the minions. I think that's just you using the minions. So it's really just 20% additional damage, though I could be wrong about that. And then, early on, you want Mighty Guard for the plus minion skill level and Spirit Magi growth. Later on, especially as you get a decent weapon, you want Isomorphic Arms. As a note, which one of these you use kind of goes back and forth depending on your gear. I found that more recently with my new weapon, Isomorphic Arms felt a little bit better. But if it starts to feel bad or you try it and it just doesn't seem to be doing it for you, this is also a really good option for a very long time. In terms of pathing through, very early on, you will want the Spirit Magi cooldown recovery speed to have 100% uptime on your Fire Spirit's enhanced skills. Later on, you don't need that, so you can just go either minion damage or Spirit Magi's ultimate skill damage as you start spamming it. This is kind of the middle ground. Honestly, at this level, I should probably have swapped to the ultimate skill damage because it is slightly more total DPS. Or probably what's going to happen is over the next few levels, I just put points here and have both. For the start, minion damage, I skipped the minion attack and cast speed. This is the only place I skip it just because the other nodes are so good. Minion crit strike, pretty good. Minion skill area feels really good with all the skill area. You just hit the entire screen all the time. It's great. Then over here, minion skill level, super crucial. This is where you'd cap it out and then you come back later to take things like life regeneration speed and movement speed because getting around is good. And Iris Vigilant Breeze applies her movement speed to her minion, specifically the minion you are possessing. After that, you take Alchemist. Here, early on, you can actually go Empower instead of Source, but I found that Source feels better overall. And you want Talons of the Abyss. For every 20 growth, additional damage. For every growth, additional ultimate attack and cast speed. This feels really, really good. Again, early on, you could do this with a Fire or a Stuffed Battle Trumpet, but you'll want to swap off that pretty quickly, so just go Talons of Abyss in my opinion. For the nodes, damage, this time into speed, then coming over here to Spirit Magus ultimate damage. Then you come across for damage transfer and minus 80% additional damage taken. Before pathing down here for +1 spirit level and minus 80% additional damage taken. My understanding of that is that it does what it says on the box. Basically means your Spirit Magi will take about 4% of normal damage. You'll still have to deal with the life loss from your hero trait, but it means enemies probably aren't killing them, like, ever. Next up, these are the optional things that you fill out after completing the entire trait. So, max life, life regen, more max life, basically lots of defenses, and after I fill out this talent, I'm probably going to go get the damage over here in God of Machines, because it seems kind of free. Again, though, my damage hasn't felt bad, so instead I went for the defensive stuff. Now, Warlock. First up, Indifference, +2 to all skills level. This is part of why you don't need so many minion skill levels, though they're all, pretty good still. And Off the Beaten Track allows you to add a whole bunch of supports to your auras and actually reduce the mana multiplier. When in the season reveal it said there was going to be something changed about Off the Beaten Track, I thought the mana multiplier was going to be changed. It has not been, so Off the Beaten Track is, as far as I can tell, not actually nerfed. Then over here, minion damage into minion speed, into some life, into some minion damage, into +1 max charges and cooldown recovery. This applies to you, not your minions. Important distinction there. The max charges feels really, really good on all the utility skills. And damage, minion damage, attack and cast speed, all skills level. Really, really good. For slates, these are all trash slates that I've picked up off the floor. Basically, I'm looking for the word minion. The sealed mana compensation, by the way, is not actually doing anything. All the auras fit without it. Unfortunately, right now, I'm pretty sure my res wouldn't be capped without the slates. So yeah, early on, res slates are actually kind of good. Long term, you don't really want res slates because you can get more res on gear. One very important thing to note. The reason why all of these are automated is not just because I'm, lazy and not going to use my skills, though that is a lot of it. It is also because you can't use any skill except for the skill in this slot when you are using your minion form. So, you only get one of your skills when you're in minion form. That means all the rest, if you want them to go off, have to be automated. And yeah, occasionally, I can't quite use my ultimate. It goes down for just a little bit. That's one annoying little quirk I haven't quite solved with a build. But now, let's take a look at some of the gear. Before I talk about the weapons, quick note. Interlocking Soul is really, really good. Honestly, even through Timemark 7, you can totally use these. The minion life regen is nice. Consuming these skills doesn't actually matter because the minion's using its skill, not you. And so, yeah, Interlocking Soul is good and you should use it. First up, Helmet. Basically, Intelligence. This is a more multiplier for your minions, life for survivability, minion damage, and a bunch of resistances. If we come into the crafting menu here, you can see among the basic affixes, there really isn't that much else. I mean, sure, armor's good, but it's not great. Among the advanced affixes, not too much for a prefix. For a suffix, though, you could get attack and cast speed and minion attack and cast speed. The minion attack and cast speed being the most important. You could get a armor life suffix, or you could get minion skill area. I think resistances early on are a little rough, so I'd advise resistances, but those are damage stats which, as your gear gets better, you can scale into. Now, I would strongly recommend using Lady's Tears as your amulet. Not only is it additional Spirit Magus ultimate damage, It makes them reconjure faster if they happen to get killed. It makes them completely immune to elemental damage, so they're even tankier. And +1 passive skill level. This is not your best in slot amulet, but for the price, you really aren't going to get better. It's like 2 to 5 FE. Super, super good item. Also, you can farm it in the story. So if you're around level 54, you're going through the treasure trove, farm a latest tiers before you move on. Next up, Belt. The stat that I strongly advise is Initial Growth. This makes your Spirit Magi stronger and gives them additional stages where they can use their skills more efficiently. So, try to get fat. For other suffixes, I would strongly advise Res. It's really not much else that's actually useful here anyway. For prefixes, Life, if you go ES instead of Life, I mean ES, maybe both. Minion damage, you could get Strength, Dex, or Int as well, which, honestly, now that I have some stuff, let's see if I can get Int here. Say at least T3 to replace the ES. Well, there we go. T2 Int. I've improved my belt. I now do more damage. For rings, I'm using this Horn Ring. It's a really solid minion item that gives you a lot of damage and a little defensive utility with the minus additional damage taken. I happen to get this as a drop. I don't know how expensive or cheap it is, especially with good rolls, but I would imagine with random rolls and huge ranges, you can get one that isn't super expensive. For chest piece, this is the most expensive item that I'm wearing. It cost me about 40 Flame Elementium, and I would say it is absolutely worth the purchase. Not only do you get all stats, huge amount of bonus damage for minions, or for all of your skills really, but also +1 to elemental resistances per 60 stats, so a little bit of extra res. Exactly how much? Well, if I take it off, my res isn't capped, and if I put it on, my res is capped. So I'd say it's pretty good. And I really need to get rid of the slates, so I need a little bit more res here. For gloves, it's honestly going to be pretty similar to the helmet. In this case, I do have a skill area minion skill area mod, but most of the rest, looking for minion damage, looking for life, looking for armor, res, all that fun stuff. One slight note though, prefix-wise, you cannot get intelligence, so your damage options are a little bit lower until you finally get to ultimate affixes. And nope, never mind. Ultimate affixes, still no damage prefixes, so just go full defense. Next up, boots. I'm using Mind Infusion because they are relatively cheap and pretty efficient. The extra Empower skill, Dark Gate, is pretty good. It buffs minions. I don't know if the teleporting here actually teleports you randomly or not. Might be making things worse. Not 100% sure. But it's movement speed, minion skill level, max life, all the things you want. Otherwise, you can use some rare boots. They will be less damage, but they could have resistances which you might need. For ring, look for intelligence. After that, prioritize life resistances, and if you can get some minion damage, then get some minion damage. You can also get flat damage dealt by minions, which, especially in lower gear, if you don't have this on weapons, say you are using Interlocking Soul, that is going to be better than the % minion damage. And even in my gear, it very well could be. I just don't happen to have it on my ring because last time I was out of materials. I've since gotten a few more. I'm probably going to try to reroll for that. And then last but not least, the two weapons that I'm using, they are basically identical, so I'm only going to be talking about one. So in terms of a starting point, I would recommend either the intelligence or the minion crit strike rating, as these are the advanced affixes on the item. And after that, spend your embers and fill it out. You want things like minion damage, adds physical damage to minions, or if you're using elemental minions, adds elemental. If you're using erosion, just some sort of flat damage. And you also want whatever is the matching damage type as a suffix. Long term, it may actually be worth replacing this with a second flat damage, especially for the elemental minions, where if you have increased elemental damage, that scales fire, cold, and lightning. But because I'm using physical minions, I'm using the minion damage % here. Since adding something like cold damage isn't going to be scaled nearly as efficiently, as I have a bunch of modifiers that are specifically for fizz on my minion supports. That said, It's not necessarily the biggest deal if you happen to hit one of the Ellie or even erosion rolls. Damage is damage after all. Just remember elemental resistances are a thing, and so bosses might not take quite as much. Last up, we have the hero trait, Iris Vigilant Breeze. So, for my 3 memories, right now I'm using a Intelligence, minion damage, got pretty lucky with that one. Intelligence is the best case, but get whatever you can get, especially early on. Having anything that gives +2 to trait level is going to be way more important than the exact rules on the item. For the first trait, I strongly recommend Whirlwind Tango. The ultimate of the Merged Spirit Magi has no cooldown. Every time it casts the ultimate, it consumes life to gain stacks of Breeze. Breeze is a damage bonus. Consuming the life doesn't seem to be too much of a problem. In fact, I haven't really noticed it. If you'll see here, the Magi does not seem to be actually losing life. I don't know if this is a bug or if it just has so much regen that it's not losing any life when it consumes it. I haven't tried Breeze's Whisper very much as a result. Next up, there's Memory of Discipline, which just has a bunch of life on it. Here I am using Wormist Vigilance, increasing the max Breeze stacks as the Spirit Magi's life is consumed. But I do think there's a point where I'm going to swap to Happiest Reunion, with max Spirit Magi in the maps +1, so instead of having just 2 rock buddies, I could have 2 rock buddies and maybe a cold buddy, or fire buddy, or a lightning buddy. I could actually lightning convert my rock guys and have a lightning buddy. That sounds pretty fun. Unfortunately, this adds quite a bit of life to the amount consumed. And so, if I do this, like so, as you can see, this other guy, that's not me, just slowly dies. And then I am sad because my buddy died and I lost a bunch of my damage. The playstyle for that feels kind of awful. It might technically be optimal, but it's very janky. So until you can solve that and get your minions to a point where they aren't dying from the drain, I wouldn't recommend it personally. Last up, Memory of Progress with minion attack speed. If you are going Rock Boys, absolutely get minion attack speed. Super, super nice for quality of life. And then Nurturing Breeze for -24% additional damage taken. Insane defensive bonus. And a portion of a bonus to life regeneration speed and life per second is applied to your Merged Spirit Magi. This is possibly why they aren't draining from the normal drain. So in short, this feels really, really good, and it lets your Spirit Magi regen super easily. I've not really experimented much with merging Stream yet, which would be Origin of Spirit Magus effects. Again, I do think like 2 rock guys and a lightning buddy applying both of the Spirit Magus effects and getting all that attack speed could be really cool as a future / min-max thing. Since I know that was a lot, feel free to use the timestamps to jump around the video, or I'm going to be putting together a build code, which you can find in-game under Pro Builds, that should have a snapshot of my character. It won't be updated over time, but it will be everything that I have as of when I make the video. Next up, since I don't really want to talk about pets, I'm instead going to talk about my Void chart. The first thing that I invested into was Black Sail, because I needed hero memories, and I needed materials to enhance them. So I took all the chance nodes and then said, alright, I have all the chance nodes, that's all I need for now. The idea here is to self-farm things that help me progress my character. And so, keeping with that theme, the next thing I did is take all of the cube chance, which is why I'm wearing horrible floor trash that I've picked up. Did also get like 20 FE from one of the cubes though, so that was pretty neat. In fact, that was part of how I was able to afford my chest piece. And then after that, I grabbed some of the beacon nodes. This way, as a transition into stuff, having the beacons get upgraded and drop more frequently makes it easier to both go from T6 to T7, then also sustain T7s, then go from T7 to T8. That kind of fun stuff. And last but not least, I grabbed these nodes here in the Nightmare to give a chance for this card to appear. It has not yet appeared, but I'm hoping it does at some point in the future, as last season I remember it was quite profitable. I would not really call this a super min-maxed money-making strategy, but I would call it what I've done so far, and what very much helped me make my first, let's say, 100-ish FE, although I do think the total value that I have spent on my gear is lower than 100. There's a few things, like the ring, that I honestly don't know how much it's worth because I got it as a drop. So I'd say my gear is anywhere between 50 and 100, accounting for things that I just picked up off the floor. Though, of course, prices are constantly changing, so it's entirely possible that by the time you look at this, you'll go, wait a minute, all this gear costs 10, or oh my god, that chest piece costs 1,000. So what about the gameplay? Well, when I was playing with Fire Spirits, it was actually pretty darn smooth, minus the random teleportation, because the big fire AoE from their enhanced skill killed most of the enemies before I really needed to interact with them. On single target, it was a little clunkier and a little bit more lacking, because while my ultimate skill has no cooldown, there are short windows where I can't actually use it. With better gear, with more consistent growth, and with better uptime on all the empowerment skills, these problems should be very easy to solve. But in the early gearing, it's definitely not the smoothest playstyle. However, the damage has felt genuinely impressive. I absolutely breezed, pun intended, through the game. Not only that, but the level of safety wasn't something that I was expecting. I thought, oh, going to the rock guys and playing melee, I'll have to get into melee range, and to be fair, after getting into melee range, sometimes my health would dip, but it was actually pretty rare for me to die outright. And I did not die a single time when I was doing Traveler 7. So, overall, this is a pretty tanky character, with a generally fun playstyle, and just a little bit of jank mixed in. A little bit of jank is kind of why I'm not entirely sure if I'm going to stick with Rock Magus or go Erosion or Lightning in the future, as I do want to try other things and see if any of those playstyles are just a bit smoother. I also think part of the problems are from being in somewhat low and janky gear. So, as I get better gear, that's going to go away as well. For clear, it's pretty simple. You just hop towards enemies, hop all the way through, stop to do any specific seasonal mechanics, and when you reach the end, hop onto the boss while maybe avoiding some of the bigger AoEs. On a boss, you just hop around for a little bit. It honestly is not too bad. When it came to Traveler, I had around 40 to 60 million DPS. I had capped resistances, and I had like 3.5k life. Basically, I recorded this video right after killing Traveler 7, so my gear is identical and the same level, all that stuff. And throughout the fight, it was not super fast, but it also didn't feel painfully slow to me. Yes, there were times where I wasn't doing all that much damage, especially when I had to move around and dodge the Traveler's abilities, but I also wasn't getting hit all that often, because as it turns out, if your main skill is a jump, you can use it to avoid damage. I know, who would have guessed? But as of right now, we are still early in the season, and I am far from min-maxing the character. These are just my experiences with the gameplay so far, along with what I've been doing. So again, if you want to follow along, do be sure to get subscribed, because as long as I keep playing the season, I'll be making updates on either this build or whatever else I roll into. For now, good luck in the season, may you drop many Flame Elementium, and hopefully you have a pretty smooth progression. As a note, if you want to know how not to level the character, then you can check out my stream VOD where I leveled it, and I had no real plan, and it was pretty darn bad. But hey, I got through it in like 3-ish hours, so I guess it wasn't the worst thing I've done. So with that, I'm going to get going. Thanks for watching to the end. I'm glad you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one.